So what I wanted to start out with was just a very brief introduction, an off-the-cuff introduction for Valarie, because Valarie is the one person who you haven't heard from, and you'll hear a lot more tomorrow, as I said, but Valarie is an extraordinary combination of many, many facets, like all of us. She is a highly skilled and deeply strategic civil rights attorney. She has a deep background in all kinds of amazing justice work. And she comes from a Sikh community. And somewhere in the last few years, she realized that really what she needs to advocate for is revolutionary love. And so she has been birthing the Revolutionary Love Project. And I would say only in addition, she's a mother, she's exquisite, and as I have been doing the work of decolonizing my own mind and heart, what I keep encountering is how dangerous love is, and how rarely we get to really stand for and with it in public in a way that doesn't undermine our intelligence, that stands with the full power of our authenticity, of our devotion, and of our realness. Because it's been degraded into a, frilly, hallmarky, right? It's sort of been downplayed as the most powerful thing we've got going. So I guess with that, I want to invite you, brave woman, to offer a few reflections about your experience this morning before we start.
I am deeply grateful to be here in this moment. I am deeply grateful to be next to the women on the stage. I said, can't I just sit on the stage and sit at their feet and look up at them? Please, that's all I want to do. They are my sisters, they are my godmothers, they returned me to the fight, and so to be on stage with you both is such a deep honor. And Nina, for you to have created this space, this is my first time at Bioneers, everyone, and I just feel like I'm home. Like, I have never, my whole life, I've never been in a space that takes seriously ideas that will change the world, that are rooted in deep spiritual understanding of the world and our interconnectedness. I've never been in a space where Indigenous elders and voices are honored in the way that they have been. So many Indigenous youth in the audience. I said yes because of that. And so Nina, now you've just ushered me into a circle that I feel like I've been waiting for my whole life. So thank you. Thank you. I'm still having trouble finding the words to say what I want to say to these two women. And I think the best I can do for you all is to describe the experience that I had in my body this morning. I feel as though I've been immersed in Terry's words, but this is the first time I had ever heard you speak. And I feel as though I can still experience the pulsing of the earth inside. It's like echoing, resounding inside of my body. Do you all have that experience? Yeah. And it's a gift that you gave us that we can turn to and experience whenever we need to remember what we've forgotten. And after you gave that to us, you turned inward in such a way that was gentle and courageous, and witnessing you turn inward and give language to what you found inside of you, that torrent of words, the pain and the grief and the rage inside of you, it gave us permission to do the same. And so I found myself turned inward in that really raw, tender way to go deep into our bodies, to go deep into the earth. That's what you did. And down when I was inside of that, of course, my love, Eve Ensler, cracks me open. My chest was cracked open, Eve. I actually, both of us, we were sitting in the way back to try to send Eve good energy, because we're going to support Eve. And then at the end of it, we both had to leave the auditorium as quickly as we could. And I had to go sob. My chest was heaving, I was sobbing, and I was sobbing in Eve's arms, and it was like, oh, to be turned inward and touch the truth within us. That is how we go through the wound. That we can't go through it alone. That going through it is how healing happens, how freedom lies on the other side. And just so you all know, like, Eve has been I did the vagina monologues when I was in college. I was like Shiro for a long time, and then by some twist of fate, Eve has come to be godmother to me and the work that I do now. And so to have someone I've loved so fiercely do that for me, and then to look around and see how she was doing that for thousands of people and hundreds of us in this space, oh, that's what we do for each other. We make each other brave enough to show up to our lives again when we want to give up. And there have been plenty of times when I wanted to give up, especially the last few years. Especially since my daughter was born. And so to be brave enough to show up to one's life and love anyway, I want to last. And I look at you both, and I see how you've moved through this world, and I want to last like you both, and I want to know how. This is my question to you. What has made you brave enough in these years to keep showing up with love despite everything anyway?
People like you. Really, I think of you. I think of the magnificence of you and the younger generations, and we don't dare give up. What will we say to the people who come after us? You know, I mean, we are all a chain of evolving humanity. You know what I mean? And if we quit, it doesn't get to go on. That's just that. But also, you know, I'm of the Beckett school. I love Beckett, and it's I can't go on, I must go on, I will go on, you know? And why not? The alternative is not going on, and that does not seem appealing, right? I mean, you know, I think also I just want to say that I look at Terry, I look at Nina, I look at Afia, I look at Jody, I look at all my sisters, I look at Alixa and Naima, I look at so many of my sisters here today, and I am here because of my sisters. I am here because I am in a community of Bioneers. I'm in a community of 1 Billion Rising. I'm a community of V-Day. I'm a community of activists, of sisters and brothers all around the world who I have made a commitment to that is bigger than me. It's bigger than me. It's not about us. I'm old. I'm done. Yeah, I'm really done, and I'm okay with that. But my commitment is to life. It's to something much bigger than me. And I think once you get hooked to that thing, that bigger thing, then it isn't about you anymore. So you're in pain, so get over it. So you feel sad, so get over it. Get connected to the bigger thing. And I just want to say one other thing. There's a woman named Jane who is my inspiration. She's at the City of Joy in the Congo. And I met Jane 9 years ago. And Jane, I think, suffered some of the worst violence I've ever heard on the planet. And I've heard a lot of violence. You know, raped, and her insides were destroyed, and then came to a hospital for 5 years, went back to her community and got raped even worse. And tied to a tree for a month, almost died, was impregnated by soldiers. I'm telling you this because it's a public story. When I met Jane 9 years ago, she was at Pansy Hospital, and she was broken, and her body was broken, and her, you know, was in the hospital 8 years, 9 operations. Today, Jane is literally a bodhisattva. She is a light. She is a light. If you met this woman, you would not believe it is possible what light comes out of this woman. She's one of the leaders at City of Joy. She lifts up the other women. Her life is devoted to the health and welfare and radicalization of her sisters. And I look at Jane and I think, what fucking problem could I possibly have? What problem could I have? What problem could I have? Like, honestly, I get up in the morning, like, what problem do I have? You know, and I really hold her. I have a picture of her, I have pictures of her all over, because she represents to me what happens when your light gets hooked up to the divine. It's just not about you anymore. It's about taking that poison and turning it to medicine, taking that pain and turning it to power. And I think the way to go on is to get hooked up, you know? Would you like to add, my love?
I just love listening.
No, you say something. This is a panel.
You don't have to, Terry. We can go someplace else.
That is cheating.
You have a choice. What would you like?
I think it's really important to listen. Eve scares me, so I will say, I love these women, and Valarie and I just met, and I so appreciate you. I so appreciate you. And Nina and Eve are bookends to whatever courage I can find, because I think of their lives and what they have said yes to and what they have said no to. And there are days when I wonder how I can get up in the morning. And you must feel that too. And in those days, I'm aware of the limits of my own imagination. But what I have learned from these women, and so many of the women and men in this audience and beyond, is that imaginations shared create collaboration. And in collaboration, we find community. And in community, anything is possible. And that's how I go on. And I agree, it's not about the individual, it's about the community, both human and wild. And my reaction to Eve, I said at lunch, we were laughing so hard, most of my life I'm feral, and I try and behave myself when I'm in public situations. But after listening to Eve, and we did run out, I was so thrilled. I was so joyous. And when I can't contain myself, I howl. And I let out the biggest coyote howl imaginable. And to me, that's, joy is a sibling of grief. And it is parented by love. And to have Eve name the 1.3 billion birds, 1.9, 2 billion, whatever we are not seeing or recognizing as leaving us, to have that be named today, together, here, now, was such a powerful celebration of their presence, even in their absence. And what I know about birds is that they do reappear. They know how to hide. And I have to believe that those 1.9 billion spirits of the birds are still with us, and I feel that you called them forward.
See how important it was that you spoke? Yes, can we all howl? Let's have howl.
Isn't that thrilling?
Wow. What was the title of your book with the birds?
When Women Were Birds.
What was it?
When Women Were Birds.
So I have to tell you this very funny story that I've never told you. I'm going to tell it publicly. Okay.
We may not get to the panel, but this is good.
But it's connected. It's connected. So I had Terry's book on my bedside table because I just love to dip in and out of it so much. I just loved that book so much. And this guy I wasn't even going out with this guy. I was sleeping with this guy, you know, and he, just really, really lovely guy. And I just was like, don't get attached. I'm a bird. I'm a bird. I land, I fly away. There's no moving in. That just doesn't exist in my realm anymore. That's
This
over.
is how we survive.
Yeah, this is how I was like, this is my realm. This is the realm. So we had this night where we were, you know, doing the thing. And he looked over and that book was on my nightstand. And what's the title of it?
And he thought it
When
was a
Women
field
Were
guide.
Birds.
When Women Were Birds. And he was like, whoa, you really are a bird. I laughed so hard. Anyway, I'm sorry. It was a detour, but
We show up for each other.
Well, and just to add on to what Terry was saying, you know, when my mother was dying, I reached a point where I knew that I needed to be held in community. And so I would come home from my mother's house at night, and I would write these letters. And both Eve and Terry were on the receiving end of them, and some of you in the audience were too. And, you know, I didn't need answers back. I just needed to know that they knew what was going on in my life. And really, for me, it was such a gift to know that that net of connection, that web, was there for me, and that these magnificent women were helping hold it. I was like, oh, good, I'm not alone in this, okay. And, you know, that's how, right? That's how we get through. I think we have, I think we were designed by nature to be relationally intelligent.
We are each other's midwives.
Yes, exactly. Midwives and hospice workers. Yeah. So I think, do you want to say something else?
Well,
Go.
it made me want to share this with you. This word love, which, you know, is on our lips, and it's also such a triggering word. I feel like our culture has butchered this word. And when I am thinking about what we're talking about, I come back to this word. And I just want to share, I'm a lawyer, right? So I never use the word love in public because, you know, they're going to eat you alive if you talk about love when you're trying to fight the good fight. And so it all shifted for me after my daughter is 11 months. My son is 4 years old now. The moment that he was put on my chest, I had that rush of oxytocin, right? It's a falling in love. And this is what most of the time when our culture talks about love, they're talking about that rush of feeling, being swept away, and it's delicious and it's delirious. And you know, it's what we live for. It's glorious and it's fleeting. And it's something that happens to you, right? We fall in love, like we fall into a jar of honey. It's something that happens to you if you're lucky. If that's our only definition of love, if that's our only definition, then we are told that love is the most important thing in our lives, and yet it's something that we have little control over. No wonder so many of us are so anxious about what it means to love. And so what would it mean to expand that definition? I didn't know until weeping, sobbing, shaking, feeling that rush. I'm falling in love, and I look over at my mother, who has been my midwife this whole time, and she is unpacking her bag, getting ready to feed me. Taking out the dal and chol and scooping and ready, like feeding her baby as I'm feeding mine. And I'm like, Mommy, just give me what? And I look over her, and I realize, like, oh, my mother, she has never stopped laboring for me. Like from my birth to the birth of my children. You know, my mother had an arranged marriage when she was 18. You know, she and my father, they were like, our daughter is not going to have this kind of life. She's going to be able to be free. I thought I wasn't supposed to be like my mother. And all this time she was showing me what love actually is. Like, love is more than a rush of feeling. Love is sweet labor. It is fierce. It is bloody. It is imperfect. It is demanding. It is life-giving, and it is a choice that we make over and over and over again. And it's not just one feeling, it's like all the feelings, right? This made me think of it. Joy is the gift of love. Grief is the price of love. Anger is the force that protects that which is loved. We need all of these emotions in the labor. We need to move through all of these emotions in the labor. And I think that's what happened. That's when happening for me all day, is that you both have cracked me open enough for me to inhabit those emotions, to show up and keep loving again. And so I want to ask you about rage, because you both touched upon it. Like, you talked about how rage is the site for healing, that perhaps we move through the rage to find healing. And of course, Eve, it's like, you enter the wound and that you go through the rage, but to find freedom on the other side. It's like, what is the alchemy? Like, how do you both actually, physically, concretely, I hope this is okay, I'm just like I need to know.
It's a brilliant segue, of course.
We're all just making this happen.
Yeah. What do you do with your rage?
I mean, that's one of the questions I have, is how do we take our anger and transform it into sacred rage? And for me, it's always through action. What is the gesture? What is the action shared? And my brother, and I hope I don't trigger anything here. My brother took his life a year ago, Dan Tempest, and he was a beautiful human being. An artist, a philosopher. He loved language. He was a working man. He worked the frac lines in North Dakota. He worked in our family business. He said, Tara, I finally have mastered dirt. That mattered to him. He also banded migrating birds. He would tell me that it took 3 people to bring in a golden eagle. They had to wear helmets when they brought in a peregrine falcon. And he said, with a red-tailed hawk, they always yielded. 3 months before he took his life, he called me and said, I bought the rope. And we had a conversation, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, and he said, I'm eroding. I am eroding. And you are in denial. And he said, I'm fucked, you're fucked, the earth is fucked. You have to wake up. And we had a long conversation, and I just said, Dan, I will never give up on you. I will never give up on the earth. And then I remember he said, do you think I can get better? He suffered from mental illness, from depression. The last thing he said to me, our last conversation was, I'm going under. Knock if need be. I never did. And I realized in those moments it's not the big gestures. We think we can save a landscape, a species. And I'm haunted by, if I had just knocked, the small things, the small gestures, we would have held each other. And here's what I want to say. What do you do with that self-rage? My youngest brother, Hank, made a vow to Dan when he said, I've been buried too long, I want sky. And I didn't know this, but Hank made a promise that he would see him through cremation, which is not a typical gesture in Mormon religion, to say the least. And I don't mean to be taking this much time, but we went to see Dan's body as it was prepared for cremation. And we asked to see his body, and they said, I'm sorry, that won't be possible. And it was a high school friend of mine. Utah's a small town. And I said, why? And he said, well, I would rather not say. And I said, why isn't it possible? And he said, well, he's been shrink-wrapped. Shrink-wrapped. And I said, well, that seems, do you have a pair of scissors? And we were able to spend time with Dan's body. We did our private rituals. We placed feathers in his hands. We put sunflower petals on his heart, on his neck, on his forehead. And then I thought we were done. I was ready to say goodbye. And the man who was going to perform the cremation, and this was not for families, it was a storage unit actually, Hank said, we're ready to place our brother's body in the flames. In the flames. I was not prepared for that. But my brother looked at me and said, are you here? And we placed our brother's body in the flames. And we sat for those 6 hours while his body was transformed. And when Mr. Rabe, in a black suit and welder's gloves, opened up the door, there was our brother with his chest looking like prayer flags. He looked like Icarus, and it was beautiful. And we watched Mr. Rabe rake our brother's bones, spread our brother's bones, close the door, and we waited another 3 hours. The doors were opened. We stood with Mr. Rabe, and our brother was gone. I was not prepared for that. And then again, the raking of bones, the spreading of bones, placing them in trays, taking them, our brother's bones, into another room. Mr. Rabe left us, and here were 3 trays of bones, recognizable: a femur, a jaw, fingers. I said to Hank, what are you thinking? And he said, I'm thinking the same thing you're thinking. Are they coyote? Are they rabbit? Are they raven? There is no hierarchy in death. And we felt the last heat of our brother's body. And with Mr. Rabe, when he came back, we watched the grinding of his bones into ash. And then we weighed them. 8 pounds, 2 ounces, the same weight my brother was when he was born. The same weight of a gallon of water in the desert. To me, that's what we do with our rage. And it turns into presence.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you for the question.
So, rage is such an interesting thing because I was filled with it for so many years. And it was such a motivator. You know, it got me to do a lot. It compelled me and compelled me and compelled me. But it has a particular energy that is always not kind, always not inclusive, always not aware. It's got a very specific trajectory, you know? It's kind of either kill or get things done. Do you know what I mean? And I don't like that anymore. I don't want to be ruled by rage anymore. It doesn't sit well inside me. I don't like it feels very individualistic in a weird way. It feels like it's controlling you, the way you were talking about love. Like it's driving you. I don't think we can deny rage. We can't but I think the transformation of rage is really critical. And for me, what I do with rage is I write. What I do with rage is I dance. What I do with rage is I be more generous than I thought I could be. I push it further. I give more. I give more. I give more. Go past that point. You know, the other night I was with my dear friend Pat Mitchell, whose book just came out, Becoming a Dangerous Woman. And we were talking about what is being dangerous. What is really being, and it goes back to what you were saying. Being dangerous right now is loving. That is really the most dangerous thing we can do. And by that I mean really loving, really giving to people, really seeing people, really experiencing everyone around you and tuning into their suffering or their needs or their trauma or their feelings. Being loving to me is really about not hoarding. We have a tendency on the left. It's a terrible tendency which has been kind of conditioned into us, I think, by deprivation rations, by capitalist programming, by a competitive paradigm that we think if one person gets something in our movement, it's going to take away from somebody else, even if we're all fighting for the same issues. I sometimes wonder if we're all fighting for the same issue because everybody's siloed off going, I got mine, I got mine. To me, loving and being dangerous is going, here, have it, take it, have it, have it, have it, have it. We all get to have it. I'm going to support you completely and totally, even if I have jealousy. Even if I have competitive feelings, actually, the more I have of that, the more I'm going to give you. I'm going to contradict that by giving you more. You know, I had a rule with myself. If I ever was jealous of my women friends for their success, I had to buy them a present. So for a period of a year, women were getting lots of presents from me, you know? But what it did is it retrained and retaught and reprogrammed that part of myself that always thinks if she gets, I get, I don't get. If she moves ahead, I don't get. If she rises up, I fall. It's completely a lie. When your sisters rise, you rise. Period. Period. And that conditioning by patriarchy has really held us back. Because when we don't support each other, when we don't offer platforms to more marginalized people, for example, if you have a platform, if you have something that you have that can benefit someone with less, who has less profile, has less ability, and is less included in this world, the best thing you can possibly do with your is to give it away. Have it, take it. It's not going to diminish you. It's going to expand you. And I think part of that, to me, is what being loving is. That is what loving is. It's like, how do we just keep giving it away until, you know, it's that great George Bernard Shaw, you know, I'm here to use myself up until I become nothing. That's what we are here to do, to give it and give it and give it until one day you're just that beautiful little stone that's, and you're gone. It's like, we did it, you know? But it takes work because the conditioning is very powerful.
I think, you know, I'm inclined to add, Valarie, that I've been wrestling with the question of anger for a long time. You know, I felt like I grew up in a household in which it wasn't safe to express anger at all. And I grew up saying, okay, well, is there something healthy about anger that I can wrap my heart around? Like, what does that look like? And my best clue so far comes from a woman named Carla McLaren, who wrote a book called The Language of Emotions. And she says that anger is your body's way of telling you that a boundary has been trespassed. And so I find that I'm kind of more interested in outrage than in rage. And I feel like as women, we have had so much conditioning to not express anger or outrage, you know, that in a world where babies are born with over 200 exogenous chemicals in their bodies from birth, if that's not trespassing a boundary, what is, right? I mean, we should all be out on the streets about that a long time ago. And so I feel like I'm in this inquiry about how do we reclaim healthy outrage, because it's part of what can fuel us into the action that's so needed. Yeah.
Oh, I resonate with that. So unlike Eve and like Nina, growing up in a Punjabi household, I learned how to suppress my rage, right? To be good, to be loving meant not to be angry, not to show rage. My mother was very sad for many years, but it was just rage turned inward. And oftentimes it will come out in a flash of rage over things that don't matter. We know we have rage about things that matter if we have flashes of a rage over things that don't matter, like spilt milk, the door left open. And so my mother, watching her on her journey, actually gave me permission to start to explore and unleash the rage inside of me. And because when rage is turned inward, you know that it wreaks havoc on the body. And so I experienced a moment of just an encounter, like many women, of sexual assault when I was a kid. And for many, many years, I had a lot of dysfunctions in my body and my pelvic floor, and I didn't know how to solve them. I went to every kind of doctor, and until I met a mentor who worked with bodies. Trauma lodged in the body as much as in the mind, and he helped me imagine that moment when the assault took place, becoming a tiger. It's like, okay, I can imagine becoming a tiger, sure. It's like the most ferocious animal I can imagine. It's like, okay, now it is, it's about to happen. The boundary is about to be trespassed. What do you want to do? And I said, growl. He's like, fine, growl. I hadn't learned how to howl yet. So I started growling. It's like, okay, what else do you want to do? Like, I want to roar. Okay, roar. Like, what else do you want to do? I want to show my fangs. Okay, show your fangs. So what else do you want to do? I want to tear into him. Okay, tear into him. And before I knew it, in my mind, I'm like ripping into this boy's body. Like just tearing, just shredding the clothes. And it's like, no, but I reached the skin, go deeper. I am just letting myself experience violent, even murderous rage inside of myself. And I was resisting. It's like, no, keep going, let it run its course. And afterwards, I was like, tell me what happened. He's like, well, where is your assailant? And I'm the tiger, and I'm sniffing the floor, and there are just bloodied clothes on the ground. And I look up, and there he is. But he's not this monster who has power over me. He's a frail, wounded kid whose parents were dysfunctional, whose father was an alcoholic, who beat his mother. I mean, he himself was so wounded that he didn't know how to love. I could see his wound only after going through my rage, letting it run its course. I could reclaim the fight impulse in my own body. What Tommy did is he gave me a safe container for my rage. Violent, vicious rage. And once we have safe containers for our rage, then maybe what's left over is the kind of outrage that you're talking about, Nina, that allows us to wonder again about the people who hurt us, about the men who hurt us, that allows us to ask ourselves, what are the cultures and institutions that authorize them to hurt me? Maybe that's how I fight. I don't try to tear apart my opponents or unseat bad actors from power as if that's enough. Maybe that's how we fight. That's where I'm at so far.
That's beautiful, beautiful. I recently, a few days ago, I did this incredible panel, moderated this panel in New York on why we should care about Brazil. And there were beautiful people on this panel, Katana Veloso and Glenn Greenwald and Petra Costa, who's made a beautiful film called Edge of Democracy that everybody should watch. And there was a woman named Celia Shakaba, who's from the Shakaba tribe. She's one of the leading women, indigenous women, fighting to protect the indigenous people and the Amazon. And we just had this really powerful connection. And she wrote me this thing this week, which really touched my heart. She said, when we marched on the Capitol, we didn't have guns. We didn't have anything that the opposition had. What we had was our singing. And our singing was so strong, we went into the Congress. They couldn't stop us. Our singing was that strong. And I just feel, I'm going to say this because Bioneers is a place I take chances. We have a power in us and I'm going to say this as women, that we haven't even begun to tap into. We have a power in us that we don't even recognize yet, I'm promising you. Between the years of rapes, between the years of burnings, between the years of undoings, between the years of repression, it's pushed it down and pushed it down, but it is beginning to emerge. And I will tell you something, when this power emerges, it is so much more powerful than violence. It is so much more powerful than guns. We won't even recognize, I promise you, this world as we know it when this power emerges. And I really feel, and I want to say this today, our goal now is to unlock the obstacles that are preventing that power to come through in each and every one of us. We have to be bold now. We have to be bold. You know, they danced and sang their way into Congress. I have seen this all over the world with 1 Billion Rising. Women dancing their ways into situations they never dreamed they could get into, because our power is in our bodies. It's in our bodies. And when we untap, untangle, unrelease, uncap all those things that have been put like stones, like boulders, like meanness on top of ourselves, I promise you, we will know where we're going, we will know the way, and we will know how to get there. So the work is to get your bodies free in any way, and howling is a big part of it. It really is. It is. Woo!
I want to invite us into one more question before we open it to everyone else's questions. And this comes from the description that all three of you wrote, actually. And because you're all such visionary and imaginative artists with words, with language, with theater, I want to ask you, what might authentic reckoning, apology, and transformation look like personally and politically? And where would they ultimately lead us? However, whatever image comes to you, whatever you feel like expressing about that place we're going toward, what would it look like? How might you express it?
We wrote that.
You did.
I do believe that revolutionary love is the call of our times. That the only way that we are going to confront the racism and patriarchy and white supremacy and capitalism and greed and hate and the white nativist forces that are rising in America and the supremacist movements that are rising around the world is if we show up to the labor. And the only way we will be able to show up to the labor and last is if we show up with love through love. Love for others, love for ourselves, and love even for our opponents, which is the refusal to dehumanize them. I believe that the only way we can practice love is in communities and pockets. And when we do that, we experience what we've been experiencing here, Nina. We experience the world that we want. We feel it in our bodies. I have felt it in my body, the sense of community and transparency and bravery, recognition, mutual trust that we are experiencing now with each other. That's the world that we're birthing. We get glimpses of it when we create pockets of it large enough for us to inhabit it, occupy it together. And so imagine if more of us all around the world through 1 Billion Rising, imagine you've created these pockets of revolutionary love all around the world, Eve. You've created it in the hearts of people who sink into your words, Terry. Make them brave enough to create that in their own landscapes of their heart, of their home. We inspire each other. You've done it here, Nina, in this conference over 30 years. We've inspired each other to keep showing up, to live the world as it ought to be lived. I think that's what it looks like. I think it looks like this.
Thank you. I mean, my experience keeps showing me that once we have an experience of it in our bodies, then we have a hunger for it. Then we know, like, this is the good food. Oh, I can create this anywhere, right? Once we know that it's possible, it becomes inevitable, you know?
I have two images. If I'm honest, what the reckoning looks like for me is to stay home. And I remember, I think our writing is ahead of us. Whatever we write, it's wiser than we are. And years ago, I wrote a sentence that said, the most radical act we can commit is to stay home. And that's the reckoning for me. No more flights, no more distractions, but to really do the work in our own community with the gifts that are ours. Whether it's working in local schools, whether it's restoring the lands where we live, and really working on that local scale. That, for me, is my reckoning. And I'm not there yet, because I feel greedy, to be here with sisters and to learn, to listen, to partake. But that, to me, is the reckoning that we all have to figure out where we belong and go deeply there. The other image I have is a woman named Ashley Fure, F-U-R-E, and she's a brilliant composer. She's in her 30s. And she created a climate change opera. It's called The Force of Things. And I saw it. And she created, which I think is what artists do, she created a landscape so true and real and beautiful and terrifying that it became a pilgrimage. And you entered into this space of a cold, we were inside a glacier. And as the opera progressed, we moved throughout this glacier. And by the time it was over, we had so been sensitized to different sounds by Inupiat artists. One chord, one vowel, one sound, that in that moment, after 2, almost 3 hours, when the last sound was silenced, we all wept uncontrollably. That was a reckoning, and what it says to me is that each of us have gifts that only we can do, that we can offer up in the name of community as a piece to this larger mosaic at this moment in time. So I think it's, to really ask ourselves in the deepest humility, what is my gift? How can I go deeper and offer it up in the name of community?
I think mine is connected to that, as it always is. I feel like it's always like, but I think two things. I think we keep going at them. We keep using their tools and their language and their energy to go at them. And we're always going to lose on those terms, because we'll never be that greedy. We'll never be that mean. We'll never be that thoughtless. We'll never be that cruel. What's calling me lately is, how do we go under? How do we go under? How do we really figure out how we've gotten here, what's been done to people that have driven them to do the things they've done? I had the privilege of working at Bedford Correctional Facility for 8 years in a group with long-term prisoners who had done violent crimes, women. And those women really really educated me. They really taught me, because every week they would work on their crimes, and they would go deeper and deeper through writing to really investigate why had they done what they'd done, what did they do, and every week it was just dives. Like, I've just never been with people who were so honest and so real. And what I learned in that process is that nobody's ever really thought about their lives. Life has just happened to people, right? And then they wake up one day and they're in a marriage and they don't know how they got there, or they're in a jail cell and they don't know how they got there, or they're in a job and they're like, what am I doing here? What happened, you know? And I think part of what we have to do is really think about our lives. How do we get here? How do we get here individually? How do we get here community? And how do we get here as a country? And we have to start really making amends. You know, I hear white people say all the time, well, I'm not responsible for the people who came before you, before me. And I always want to laugh and I say, we're responsible for everything. We are responsible for everything, period. You know, and part of it is like, what legacy do you hold that runs through you that you have to make amends for? What is the story that has gone through your cellular makeup that you need to clean up? So that's one impulse. And the other impulse is that I think we have to go above. And by that I mean we have to go to the mystical. We have to go to the divine. We have to open the next pathways through plant medicine and through all kinds of plants that will take us to another zone. And I can only share my own experience that I think that journeying and doing plant medicine has been the most profound experience of my life. It has really opened the pathways to another dimension. It has allowed me to see myself in ways I could not see myself standing here. It has opened my heart beyond any capacity I thought it could open. And I think we should just basically put plant medicine on all the reservoirs and just call it a day, frankly. Because honestly, we have to speed things up right now. We don't have a lot of time. And to me, it's a much faster pathway, you know. But what I mean by that is this, that I feel blessed that the plants brought me to the mother, that the plants brought me to the divine, that the plants taught me who my real mother is. I know who my mother is now. It's okay that my own mother in this life, the one who was my so-called mother, didn't work out. She didn't work out at all. But that's okay, because I have a mother. We all have a mother. And she is sacred, and she is generous, and she is patient, and she is merciful. My God, she is merciful. And when people say she's going to kick us all off, you know what? I don't believe that. I think the mother made us. We're her creations. Why would she want us destroyed if she created us? She wants us to change. She wants us to be the children she wanted us to be. That's what she's calling us to do. Not so she's not a belligerent, mean mother. She's an all divine, loving entity that created all of this. And it's our job to cherish her, to protect her with our lives, to go the distance so that we get to all be here in a new time, in a new world, in a new transformation.
Thank you, Eve. The thing that I'm going to add, and while I do this, I'm going to say anyone who'd like to ask a question, please get by a microphone. The thing I feel called to add to what you're saying, Eve, is that some years ago, I started getting bitten by brown recluse spiders. It's one of the things about living in the Southwest. They're just around. And I had a brown recluse spider bite on my shin for a long time before I even knew what it was. And it had sort of developed into like a crater. And I was in this deep inquiry about what does this mean and what am I supposed to learn from it and how do I heal it, of course. And at one point I went to a woman who's been a teacher and guide for me who comes out of the Mayan tradition as well as other Mongolian shamanism and Iroquois traditions. And she said, oh, Grandmother Spider is teaching you a lesson. And I said, yeah, what is it? What can you tell me about it? And she said, She's telling you to stop meeting conflict from your masculine side. And I said, well, that's interesting. Can you tell me more about what that looks like? What does that mean to you? And she said, well, the masculine, as we know, meets conflict with aggression and confrontation and head-on and speed. And she said the feminine meets conflict very differently. Think about how grass grows through the concrete or rivers cut through a canyon. She said the feminine meets conflict with gentle, flexible, persevering pressure. And it's a very, very different approach to how do you make change. And so I've been sitting with that as a teaching for me, because the times when I have behaved in ways that I'm most ashamed of have been when I felt most powerless. And so now when I feel powerless, I think about how the feminine responds, and it helps me. Yeah. Anyone want to say anything before we take questions? I can't even see. Let's see. Oh, there's a whole bunch of people lined up. Okay, cool. Why don't we, because we don't have that much time, I'm going to suggest we hear 3 questions and then take time for anyone who wants to answer, but try to keep it somewhat brief so we can hear as many questions. Does that work for everybody? Let's start on this side and go 1, 2, 3.
Hi, can you hear me? So as somebody who was raised in a rageful household, I'm really triggered by rage, and I have a lot of my own. So my question is how, and something I've been working on, is how do you hold space or just like hold the sacred rage of other people? And this is showing up for me. I just started a decolonizing social work program, and I'm just like trying to figure out how to do that in that context.
Beautiful, thank you.
Hello, my name is Mansi, and I am inspired by the rawness and realness and the channeling of the divine feminine on the stage, and I'm going to try and do the same in my question. So I feel the power in my body, Eve. I feel it. And the stones of patriarchy, specifically about being uncomfortable, being visible, are showing up. How do I work through that?
Thank you so much, Mansi. One more.
Hi, my name is Celosia. I'm here with Food What, and I just turned 19 on October 13th. And the question I have is, how do I deal with forgiving myself? I think I'm pretty good about forgiving other people. But I'm unreasonably angry with myself for getting into a car with my assailant, or to going to my assailant's house, or for all of these things that I really blame myself for, that I understand it's unreasonable, and I understand that it's because of the patriarchy normalizing abuse. So knowing these things, knowing that my anger at myself is unreasonable, how do I forgive myself, and how do I not have rage at myself? Because I know it's unreasonable, but it's still there, and it still hurts.
Thank you so much for the courage of that question and all those questions. Why don't we take a few minutes? Who feels called?
In terms of what do we do with our rage, the first question, I go down to the river. And, I think no matter where we live, whether it's an urban landscape or a desert landscape, there are places we can go to be absorbed into something larger than ourselves. And we live on the edge of the Colorado River, and I'll just tell you, I was really furious at my editor. And I just thought, this is unreasonable, And I went down to the river for 3 hours, and I just watched the water flow. And I realized this wasn't about her, this was about me. And just, sitting. And after about an hour, maybe 2, this great blue heron just walked right up, and just started fishing alongside me. And I just thought, this is this is grace, this is peace, I'm fine. And I don't mean that as a superficial answer. I mean that as that's been a strategy for me where I live. It's a meditative strategy that, again, just the natural world for me reminds me what endures and what's important.
I want to just take a crack at the uncomfortability with visibility, right? I mean, that's, I think I just been doing a lot of reading about witches and about what happens to women or what happened to women when they were very visible. And I really believe we have cellular memory of what happened to us when we were visible. And it's almost like it's a veil, it's a wall, and we come up to it and we can almost feel the death rattle when we get near it. It's like, I can't go past this. This is my burning, this is my death, right? I want to say a few things. I think do meditations in your own life about when was the first time you were visible and what happened, so you can unearth if there's any possible trauma there. When was the first time you got seen? When was the first time you stood forward? When was the first time you came? Did something happen? And then do meditations about other lifetimes. But the other thing is, we can't do this alone. We can't, like Valarie was really nervous before this, And we were all with Valarie. We were all with her. We were like, we're doing this together. You're not doing this by yourself. You know what I mean? We're coming out here together. We're a posse. We're a crew, right? So part of it is everyone needs a posse. Everyone needs a crew. Everyone needs that group that you're going to go out with who will have your back no matter what. And if you fail, if you fuck up, you can call them and they're like, you're the best. And they don't tell you that you're a fuck up, okay? They don't say, you did that? Oh my God, how could you have done that? No, they never do that, right? And even if there's sometimes, it's a little...
Yes, you do. You told me today. You don't have any clue what's going on today.
Yes, I did say
and
that.
I appreciated that. That's the other
wait,
side.
you have to hear the context of that. She didn't know what building we were going to. She didn't know what panel we were doing. It was
when you have so many leaders in one place, you have an obligation to follow.
All right, point well taken. But anyway, you got to have friends. You got to have sisters, because it's like, I was backstage before and I was like nearly hyperventilating, and someone was like, you get nervous? And I'm like, oh no, I don't get nervous. I'm not a human being. I stopped being a human being years ago, We were both of us like throwing up before this. It isn't like you get this, I got that down, okay? And if you have, you should stop speaking, because it actually means you're not there anymore. You stand in front of thousands of people and you're going to be like, oh, this is no problem, right? So part of it is, who do you have in your corner? Who do you have that's going to have your back? And my dear friend Jennifer Buffett says this beautiful thing. She says there are 3 things required in life. In any relationship, you need to be safe, seen, and celebrated. And if people aren't doing that in your friendships, sayonara. Honestly. And I think you need your posse of the people who see you, who celebrate you, and who make you feel safe.
So I'm going to answer that last question about how one forgives oneself, but it is also connected to what Eve just said, because I find that just when I'm about to step into a space to be very brave, which for me and for, I suppose, all of us means being very vulnerable, the little critic in my head gets the loudest. The loudest. I mean, I have been in the baby cave, and I've been writing my book, and I'm almost finishing my book, and so then I barely got here. I didn't feel prepared, and I saw my heroes on the stage, and so afterwards, a little critic in my head, after I sobbed, then I went to my room, and she was like, you can't do this. You're not prepared enough. You don't know enough. you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not smart enough. It's like the old narrative that got projected into me as a child, and the first time I was called a black dog in the schoolyard, or the first time that boyfriend told me I wasn't girly enough, or the first time that teacher said, not you. I mean, I can trace the lineage of the voice of a little critic. And over the years, the little critic has become very fat. It got very, very fat in law school. You can't say the word love. Like, it got very fat, it got very big, it got very loud, and it took the image of the shape of this very ragged, squawky bird. And it would squawk, right? And it would grow fat and heavy in my mind. I noticed that anytime my girlfriends would ask me for advice, or if I was sitting with students, I would become this very wise woman. I would just give them beautiful advice. I would tell them that I would see the best of them. If they were fucking up, I would say very gently, lovingly, compassionately, right, this is the right building. Like, I would tell them. It was a mother voice, right? It was a loving voice. That's what happened. It was all love here. That's what that voice was, and it got very, very precise after my son was born. I was talking to him like a wise woman all the time, and finally I was like, why? I think it was my husband. I was like, why can't you talk to yourself that way? It's like, oh, I've just never practiced. I mean, I've heard the wise woman voice throughout. I mean, that's how I did the brave things I did, but not as a practice. And so I actually got a journal. This was not a prop. This was not prepared, but I clearly carry it everywhere I go. It says, Wise Woman Says. And inside of it, it's all pages of the wise woman talking to me. And it's all like wise woman, I write in it every day, anytime before I'm about to do something, and she says, Terry saw me writing in it when I was, a wise woman says, my love. She always calls me love, my love. She's so sweet. Like a wise woman says, my love, you are tired. You didn't sleep very much. That's okay. That's okay. You have what you need to know. Exactly as you are. That's exactly what they need. Just trust the deepest wisdom in you, and I will be here. I will be here. I was there when you were birthing your babies. I will be there with you on your deathbed. I will help you breathe and push. You'll never be alone because I love you. Be there for you. I got you. I got you. I got you. The wise woman in me grows louder in your presence. Or I should say, the wise woman's voice is always very quiet, because the little critic, at one point I was like, should we burn the little critic? Should we retire the little critic? Should we drown the little critic? And the wise woman was like, no, we need this little guy. We just don't need him in charge. He's part of you. So I created a ritual, a ceremony for myself on my birthday where I put the wise woman on the throne of my body. I read the Lava, which is the Sikh scripture that is read when you marry someone, when you marry your lover. So my husband's like, so you're married twice? I'm like, yes, it works out well for you, because now I did my ceremony. I married the wise woman. I submitted to her. I said, you will lead me for the rest of my days. I will follow you. And she knows that I hear her better when I'm in the company of people who are also led by the wisdom in them. And that's how I finally have learned how to forgive myself. In the years and the years of talking to myself, loving myself.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah.
I just want to add one more thing to the woman who was having a hard time punishing herself for getting in the car with the assailant, for going with the assailant. My therapist said a really smart thing to me many years ago when I would do self-attack, and I would do that merciless self-attack. She would always go, so who are you angry at? Who are you angry at? And it really helped me, because very often I wasn't allowing myself to be angry at who I was angry at, and it was much easier to be angry at myself. So now when I start that self-attack, I go, hold it. Who are you really angry at right now? Like when I think, oh God, that woman really doesn't like me. Do you like her? Like, is it that she doesn't like you, or are you mad at her, right? And check into that, because then you'll begin to see where your rage is and where your anger is, particularly in a situation with an assailant.
Thank you. We have about less than 15 minutes left, and we're going to have to run on time because these two are doing book signings over in the other building at 4:30. And so what I'm going to suggest is that we take the next 5 or 7 minutes to actually hear like a 1-minute question from everybody who's online, and then have closing comments. Does that sound right? So let's do it. Starting with you, Paloma.
Thank you, Nina. Paloma Pavel, Breakthrough Communities, and I'm also here with the Eco Art Matters group, which has an interactive exhibit. And my question is, this year, Nina, your words spoke to me. My mother died and went through hospice with her. And that happened at the same time that I saw a kind of disintegration and conflict happening within many of our coalitions. And so I guess the place where my heart is breaking right now is that in the face of my mother passing and dying, my brothers and sisters have been turning on each other in our family. And it's been like just melting me, like beyond belief, just tearing me apart. And that's in my inner family. And in my outer family, I see that the financial pressures among foundations and things is ripping us apart in our movements. And so the me of my personal world and the we that is in struggling and in our movements. And I guess I'm just looking for both spiritual strategies for living through this and being more leaderful or just sane in the midst of it, and also strategically how to be in community in these times when there's so many horizontal and vertical pressures happening.
Thank you. Thanks, Paloma. I'm gonna ask everybody to be quick if you can. We need to do this in order to be able to respond.
I will try. Hi, I'm Lindsay. I'm a certifying doula and songwriter. And I want to ask you a question about grief and the role of the deeply personal experience of grief in navigating these big, polarizing social and political issues. I had an abortion earlier this year, and I personally experienced that as a kind of loss and devastation that I've never experienced in my life. And I came out of that experience into this world of two dominant narratives, one that says you're evil and you killed your baby, or the other one that says, hey, no big deal, awesome, good job. And I found that there was no space for my grief because it was a choice, and it was a necessary choice, but it was also a loss that I carry in my body daily. And so I just want to hear some of your thoughts and wisdom about how you can weave that deeply personal grief into showing up authentically in these big political, polarizing issues.
Thank you.
Hello.
Sheila.
Hi. Back to the birds. Nina, your mom, Rhea, whose presence just is so strong here, her Amakua, her animal spirit, was a crane. So perhaps you could say a couple of words about that, if you're comfortable with that.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Dana Ullman from Berkeley, California. I've gone to 29 of the 30 Bioneers. And it's for panels like this and for morning presentations like this. And it's for introductions to presenters like yours, Nina, and that Kenny gives are very special to me. As a child of the 50s, I had an older brother that beat me up regularly. And finally, when I turned 40, I asked him to apologize, and he refused. Until finally he said, okay, I apologize. And I go, no. And after I told him that I wasn't going to have any communication until I got a real apology, 2 years later, I got a seemingly real apology, a really detailed letter that reminded me of some things that I even had forgotten. And then he screwed it all up by saying, Dana, you said I was abuse, and according to Webster, it has 5 different sections, and I only covered 3 of the 5 sections. Well, I accepted his apology because I realized I needed to forgive him to get him out of my craw. And I realized that I have a stronger backbone, thicker skin, and a bigger heart because I know what being abused is, and I've learned from that. So I just want to thank you for writing a book about apologies, because in my personal life, when someone has done something bad to me and they've apologized, I actually think better of them. Yeah. And we all need to apologize for the little things, the medium-sized things, and certainly the big things.
Thank you, Dana. And we got about 2 more minutes, so I'm going to ask everyone to share time really equitably. Milady.
Hi. So my comment/question is on the way that humanity is elevating the feminine and our healing and our balance going forward. And one of the ways is by opening our hearts to animals. We have a culture that has normalized systemic abuse and cruelty beyond the fathomable. And it's in our food industry, in our fabric and clothing industries, and how, as the transition to a more coherent, compassionate, sustainable human, can we, with recognizing the cultural discomfort of even talking about it and even looking at what we're paying people to do, what's the most effective way to invite people to look inside their own hearts and make love-based choices, which will bring us to the peace that we need. Thanks.
Thank you. Last questions, 3 quick ones. Over here.
Good afternoon. This is Cheryl Wilson. I'm with the National Association for Community and Restorative Justice. And thank you, Nina, for your invitation for us to be here. It's great to see you. Eve, I very much resonated with you talking about working in prisons. And that is something, doing restorative justice work, that is very near and dear to my heart personally and professionally. I found the idea of thinking about prison work, working with inmates, something that we should do in community more often than not. And I wondered if you could speak, if all of you could speak to the value of, and I say, getting a prison home, like a community of folks who are incarcerated in your communities, and what connections do you have on those levels, and just the value of that? Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sharon. 2 last questions.
Hi, I'm Mara Schiff. I'm also with the National Association for Community and Restorative Justice. Thank you, Nina. Valarie, we met at the 2015 Parliament a long time ago. I am a liberal, progressive, democratic Jew who lives in an ashram in the reddest of red Florida. Yeah. And I ran for office, and I managed to win, but it was hard. My question is, not everywhere looks like the Bay Area, not everywhere looks like Marin. When I am in spaces like this, they are so dramatically different than the space I go home to. How do we bring, it's much harder than it looks there than it looks here, and I was hoping you could speak to that for a minute. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, okay. 1 more.
I'm going to defy the perception that young people don't listen to instructions. So my question without context is, how do non-Black people support Black rage?
Ooh, what a great question. Gosh, I wish I could wiggle my nose and get us about 30 more minutes to answer all the questions. We got about 3.5 minutes. That's what we got. Now, we do have the rest of the weekend and a lot of other great sessions, and these 2 will be signing books. But in the meantime, I guess I'm just going to invite each of you to offer what you got for closing remarks in response to whatever you feel most called to. Because they're amazing questions.
I'll take, there's 2 I can take. And these are just ridiculously brief answers to very, very important, deep, powerful questions. But the first question about restorative justice and prisons and communities is such a critical question. And a couple things. My group that was in prison, 90% of them are out of prison now. And we've all stayed really connected. And as a matter of fact, one of them is now working for V-Day. We just hired her to run a new prison program we started because of her. I think when people really make connections with people coming out of prison and bring them into community, it makes everything possible. Particularly people who've been in long-term prison, because the world is completely a foreign place when they come out. And there's so much they don't understand. And I think part of how we apologize or make amends for this diabolical prison system is by paying attention to the people who are in and the people who are coming out. And I think that's so, so important, right? And the second answer I want to have to the woman is, how do white people deal with black rage? Is that the correct question?
How do white people support?
No, non-black people.
Non-black people support black rage.
Support black rage, okay. You got that, I was close. I think part of it is, how do we learn to give people space for their feelings without taking things personally, right? How do we create context in which people can share what's going on, where you don't go, oh my God, what did I do, what did I do, what did I do? It's actually not about you. It's about people having their experience and having their feelings. And if it is about you, taking the time to listen in a way where you don't get so defensive and so broken down and so fallen apart, but understand that there is a story that rage has come from. And part of that is educating yourself about the story of what's happened to African Americans in this country. The more you learn about that story, the deeper you get into that story, you understand how entitled, how right that rage is. So part of it is really educating yourself, because then you realize that we're all here to help each other get rid of what's been poisoned and put into and oppressed into, enslaved into other people.
Regarding grief, and thank you for sharing your story about your abortion. And I both honor your choice and grieve your loss. My father, who is the Marlboro man without the cigarette, what you see is what you get on the surface, and there's a lot you don't see that comes out sideways. And with the various deaths in our family, my father's been forced to grieve. And with Dan's death in this past year, I learned something from my father. And he called me and he said, I've figured it out. And I said, what? And he said, I've figured out grief. And I said, okay. And he said, Terry, you have to stare it down. And for my father, that is what he has learned. And he said, you know, I can do that. And I'm not afraid anymore. And he said, so I just want to encourage you, he said, to stare it down. And I think for each of us, we find our own way into grief. For me, I view grief as my companion. It's the raven that sits on my shoulder that you cannot see, or maybe you can. And I feel that a grief shared is a grief endured. And if my father is staring down his grief, I'm sitting with mine. And it changes. It changes. And I guess the last thing I would say is I find myself paying a lot of attention to owls, because I think they have a lot to teach us, and they have had a great impact on teaching me. And so I'm learning night vision from them and what it means to really see in the dark.
I just want to add something about grief, which is to say that each time each of you has expressed something of your grief, all of us in public, we make it a little safer for each other to keep expressing it, right? We're all products of a culture. We're emotionally nearly illiterate. And the more we encourage ourselves to say, no, I will stand with this. I will let this be seen. I will express it because I know that to not express it is going to make me sick. The safer we make it for each other all the time. And frankly, I think, Dina Metzger has coined a phrase, extinction illness. And she says that she believes that everything alive on Earth right now can feel the truth of what's happening. And that because we can feel it in our animal bodies, we're all behaving a little weirdly. And that makes, like, as soon as I read it, I went, oh, that's right. I've seen it, I've felt it, of course. So how do we, in the interest of making visible and palpable the world we're co-creating, let's express grief in the healthiest and most vulnerable and real way we can. And similarly with outrage, and with revolutionary love. How do we make it safe for each other to show up in the truth of who we are? Partly by being it, right? And choosing to own it in ourselves and to accept it in a loving way.
Is it okay if I close? Yes, okay, I'll close. I just feel moved to close with a story, so, which is my response to all of those questions and to all of you. It's the story of the first woman warrior in my tradition, in the Sikh tradition. The story goes, in the year 1705, there was a great battle that was underway in now South Asia. And the Guru, the 10th Guru, our warrior Guru, was waiting for 40 soldiers to arrive on the battlefield to fight empire. And the 40 soldiers were so afraid that they turned back and they returned to the village. But this village woman turned to them and she rolled up her sleeves and she said, "What are you doing here? You will not abandon the fight. You will return to the fire and I will lead you." So she donned a turban and she mounted a horse and she had a sword in her hand and fire in her eyes and she led them where no one else would go. She became the one she was waiting for. My grandfather told me that story when I was a little girl in 2 long braids, and when I would come home crying from school, from whatever, and he said, "Don't abandon your post." And I would not. Yes, he saw me as a warrior. I'm like, okay. Fast forward, and these days, I think about that story, and I realize that I am the warrior, and I am also the deserter. And it's okay to be both. That it's okay to be the one who says sometimes, some mornings, I can't. The little critic, I can't. I want to stay home. I'm not good enough. I can't. I'm not brave enough. It's okay to want to give up. And then the task is, the brave thing is to find the wise woman, the warrior woman inside of us, or outside of us, who takes our hand and leads us back to the fire. That's the choice I feel like I have to make every day. And I know that war metaphors don't work for everyone, so if it doesn't work for you, let it go. I come from a warrior people, so I've had to make sense of all of this. And the way I've done it is imagine the battlefield as the place, as the site where I have to show up. Do I have to show up to grieve? Do I have to show up to rage? Do I have to show up to serve, to fight for another, to fight for myself? What will I risk? Who am I fighting for and who am I fighting with? And as long as I can show up, as long as you can show up to that field every day, led by the deepest wisdom inside of you, you are enough. It is enough.
Thank you, Valarie.
This woman is a total rock star. Really. So proud.
Thank you, Eve. Thank you, Terry. Thank you all. I'm sorry we have to run, but we'll see you in the next slot. Thank you for your beautiful